I'm Miss Heather from the Tewksbury Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you back to our Maker Craft. Today we will be making llamas, complete with their very own woven blankets that we will be making from yarn. And so to make your llama today, you will need a piece of cardboard, you will need some yarn. If you have multiple colors, that's really great because it'll be fun and interesting. You'll need some scissors and a pencil and a ruler. Last but not least, you'll also need some markers. If you have permanent markers, those are great to use. And if you have regular markers, those are okay too. You just might have to wait a little bit longer for them to dry. So gather those materials and meet me right back here. To begin making your llama, or whatever animal you choose to make, you want to draw it out on a piece of cardboard and then use your scissors to cut that out. The first thing to do now that we've got our llama all cut out is to decorate it. Maybe you want to decorate a face, maybe some strings of pom-poms, maybe some lines to show where the wool is. However you want to decorate it, I'm sure it'll look great. So get all of those decorations drawn on there with your markers or permanent markers or whatever you have. And then meet me right back here for the next step. The next thing that we're going to do is create the warp threads. These are the threads that go up and down and they hold everything in place. You'll see these warp threads on a loom or other types of weaving materials. And so to do that, you want your ruler and pencil. And I did 5 warp strings for this one that I did earlier. So you can choose to do 5 or 6. Somewhere in there gives you just about enough room to have a nice blanket on your llama. And an easy way to make sure that your notches are matching is to hold your ruler up and down so that the ruler touches both the top and the bottom of the llama. And then you can go ahead and draw a line that's maybe about 1 centimeter long. It really doesn't have to be very long at all. And then move over maybe about 1.5 centimeters, maybe a little bit more. And draw another line on the top and on the bottom. And these lines are just to help us remember to where to cut so that we can have some spots to put our warp threads so that we can have a very cool llama with a very cool blanket. All right, so I have my spot for my warp threads here and I'm ready to cut those with the scissors. So just go ahead with your scissors and cut on those little lines that you just made. And then we'll get started to wrap those on our llama. So now that we've got those notches cut out, the next thing that we're going to do is create those warp threads that go up and down, and we'll start putting those on our llama. You'll notice I don't really see them very well in this one here. It's sort of just holding the weaving together, and what you weave through it is really the star of the show. So maybe you pick a warp color that you don't like as much, and to get started with that, flip your llama over to the back, and what you'll do is you'll start your warp thread and you'll just wrap up and down and up and down, up, down, up, down, up. And once you have wrapped your llama with your warp threads, you'll see that you still have some left over. So trim off the excess, the extra, and we'll use our tape to tape those down. So I've got a piece of tape where the warp thread started and where the warp threads ended. And we're using tape here so that if we decide to take the weaving or the blanket off later, we can do that. It will just come off much more easily if we have it just taped on. So now we are ready to begin weaving. So pick out one of your pieces of yarn. I think I'll pick my blue one. And so it's a little bit easier to work with. I'm just gonna cut a piece off that's about 12 inches long. It's okay to cut your yarn down a little bit. If you do cut it and then you realize that it's a little bit too short, you could always just tie some more yarn together and to lengthen that piece of yarn that you had. To get started weaving the weft, the part that goes through horizontally, the colorful part that you see really prominently on this llama here. A tip is to wrap the end of it in a little bit of tape, and that will help to keep the yarn a little bit more secure and keep it from fraying and just make it easier to work with, especially for weaving on something a little bit smaller like this. So I've got my yarn wrapped up here. And to start with my weaving, I am going to go under the first warp thread and then over the next warp thread. So under, over, under, over, under. When I get to the end, I'll pull and I'll leave a small tail, maybe about 1 inch long. And you can see how I've just pulled this down a little bit towards the bottom. And that's because we're going to be weaving from the bottom up. So next, to go started for the next row, see we just ended under. So now we want to reverse and go over and then under the next one. Then over, then under, then over. You always want to be doing the opposite of what you just did. And when you've done that one, you can push it down a little bit, smooth it out, however you'd like. And we've just woven our second row. And now we're back to how it was when we first started. Under, over, under, over, under. And again, pull and slide down. And we've just ended under, so now we'll go over and then under. Are you getting the hang of it? I hope so. Weaving is really fun and you can make all sorts of different things with yarn or other sorts of thread. And so now you can see that I don't have too much of my blue left. I've just been able to weave just a few rows here. So I think I'm going to change my color. And to do that, I'll just cut off this tail here and I'll leave it just like that. And this will really be helpful for removing the weavings that we made. And that way you can make as many weavings as you like. You can make so many different ones if you leave it out with the tails like this. And I'll show you how to do that at the end. All right, so next we're gonna pick a different color. I think I'll cut a little bit more than I cut last time so I can have some more purple. So I think I might cut 12 and maybe 6 more inches, maybe for a total 18 inches. And again, trimming this yarn is just simply to make it easier to work with, easier to weave. If you don't want to trim it, that is okay. And I think I'll add a little bit of a reinforcement on this one as well. I liked how easy it was to work with. And again, I'm just doing that with a little bit of tape, wrapping right around. All right, so it looks like my blue is on top right here. So now my purple will come in and it'll go right under because we're continuing that pattern of over, under, over, under. So we're under, then over, then under, then over, then under. And again, pull and slide it down. And now our tail's on the other side. Well, actually, our tail's not on the other side. We have to pull because we have to keep going up to the next row. So our tail stays on the same side and we're ready to go over. You guys notice it is under. So now this weft, this horizontal piece is going over then under, over then under, and getting a nice pull, nice and tight. So keep going with your llama. Change colors whenever you'd like. You can just simply trim off where you're done with one color and start right in where you're going with the next color. If you would like to take your weaving off of your llama, you can do that, or you can keep it on. If you want to keep it on, I recommend tying these tails, or you can tuck them behind. And if you want to be able to take your weaving off and then eventually do another one, what you'll do for that is use your pencil, and we're going to be looping these tails right into these looped ends right here, the colorful pieces where we have made our weft. So I like to use my pencil to pull the loop a little bit, and then I can put the tail right into that loop that I made, and then I can gently pull down a little bit, and that will help it keep it a little bit more secure. I'm going to do that all the way down, looping in my tails. And again, if you decide that you don't want to take your weaving off of your llama, you don't have to do that at all. It could stay there forever, and that's okay. Once you have tucked in all of your tails, tuck them right into those loops that are on the side there. Turn your llama over and take off the tape. And then next, we're going to cut these warp threads. You'll put new warp threads on every time you want to make a new weaving. So you can just cut those right in the middle. Try to cut them in the middle if you can, because we're going to be tying these. So it's a little bit easier to tie them if you have a similar amount on both sides. All right, so now take off two pieces that are next to each other. 1, 2, and tie those together. So I like to, when I tie, make a loop, and then I push a piece through the loop, and then I pull, very similar to tying your shoes. So if you're a shoe tying expert, you might be a weaving tying expert as well. So just to keep taking two pieces that are next to each other and then tying those, maybe 1 knot or 2 knots. However you'd like. And repeat that for all of the ones on the bottom and all of the ones on the top. And so once you have all of your knots in there, you'll have a little weaving about that size. Today for Makercraft, we made llamas, and we talked a little bit about weaving. We learned about the warp pieces, those kind of whitish ones that go up and down. And we learned about the weft pieces, the pieces we wove in that go side to side. And we also made a very fun llama. I hope you enjoyed making this as much as I did. Tune in next week for our next video, which will be Little Einsteins. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, bye-bye.